Hello, 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 and welcome to this YouTube channel. My name is Jamila, and I am a master manifester, and I'm sure you are too because you are consuming content like this. The name of this lovely channel is Holistic Manifesting because I believe in a whole body, whole mind, and whole being experience when it comes to manifesting these amazing lives that we're choosing. What I'm discussing in this video is you have to separate to elevate, right? I don't want to be cheesy, but it just came to me that way. Separate to elevate, and how being in solitude is your superpower, right? One of the things that was one of the hardest things for me to learn throughout my journey, that's been a continuous theme over and over again, is that if you are connected to the wrong people, places, environments, or anything, you will always be bogged down or held down by the energy or the mindset of those places, right? If you are trying to clean up anything specific in your life and create a new pattern or a new way of being or a new insight or a new values in your life, and you try to stay connected to people or places that are opposite those values, you'll find yourself constantly in a battle, in a struggle, in a fight, as opposed to expanding and growing and reaching towards the higher heights. And, say you have these two distinct groups. A lot of people have this particular situation. You come from a particular family group or whatever, and say they have a certain mindset about, I can't think of something very specific now. Say they have a specific mindset about how women should be treated, or the value of women, or the quality of, what women are responsible for in this world, right? You might come from a very maybe patriarchal family or something. And say you have a mindset of like, well, I want to live a life where I'm diving more into the divine feminine, where I'm figuring out what is the feminine aspects of these environments that are not being lauded, that are not being expanded, that are not being grown, that are being pushed away. I want to see more of that. If you come from that environment, you're going to find yourself always fighting against the current if you hang in that environment and try to grow that other aspect of who you are. When you go into environments that are more open and welcoming to it, even if you don't fully understand where it is you're growing to and what it is you're growing into, it's a larger container in a bigger space for you to expand and grow and explore and be curious and try to figure out those new aspects of who you are. Many people experience this with their finances, definitely. That's something because they'll have like a friend group maybe who likes to spend up the whole entire bank account before there's new money coming, that may be doing things like, I used to work at a payday loan place. So I know a lot about those just shifty loans when I was younger. But I remember working there thinking like, it was an interesting experience. But I would see like people who are friend groups. And it would be like, people who work together in the same environment. And it would be three women sometime. I remember they would come in and all getting payday loans at the exact same time. And they all worked at the same place. And when I think about environments or setups like that, if one of them wants to expand and grow and be like, I need to start saving money. I need to manage my money a little bit better. I need to, minimize what I'm putting out so I can get better outcomes. I need to, what is it called? Downsize these things in my life so that I can afford the lifestyle that I'm actually living, or whatever it is that you come up with. It's not going to happen when you're connected to that group that doesn't see the importance of the value in that. When you are connected to the group that doesn't see the importance of the value in what you're trying to create and grow, you're always in a mental and energetic space of being weighed down by the old belief system. When you're trying to create the new belief system cannot pour into where the old beliefs are still sitting. It's like you have to get in a space where you're completely cleaning yourself out of that mindset and of the things that brought you to where you are so that you can get to where you would like to be. One of the best quotes that I always like, and I don't know who exactly this is. It might be Jim Rohn. It might be, what's his name? Les Brown, could be. I've heard this back in the day when, before influencers and stuff, they used to be like, hardcore personal development people. And you could only get to them by having their CDs and their tapes and stuff like that. And then YouTube came along, and then, there's a lot more people in this space. But some of those people, I kind of get their information mixed up. It could have even been Tony Robbins. I'm not sure. But it was saying that, if you hang around 5 broke people, you'll be the 6th one or something like that. And I might have the number wrong or whatever. But it was saying how birds of a feather flock together. meaning that it's really hard for you to create new habits and become a new version of who you are when you are still connected to everything you used to be. I've seen this happen a lot with women when it comes to relationships and like what they're willing to accept in a relationship or what they're willing to entertain in a connection, or whether or not they'll even value a relationship at all or value a connection or at all. When they get into a space where they're around women who are relationship no matter what, no matter how bad it is, no matter how rough it is, no matter how much it's not serving them, no matter how much there's no quality in it, no matter what kind of man it is, as long as it's a man. I've been in environments like that, and let's try to cherry pick all the little good qualities, even though there are these glaring red flags right in our face, right? In those environments, it's really hard for you to say, you know what, I deserve better in life. I want to experience more peace. I want to experience more abundance. I want to experience more freedom. I want to experience more of an authentic love, more joyful. I want someone who can meet me at where I'm at as far as my, intellect. We can have conversations on another level. Whatever it is that you're putting out there, you won't be able to solidify that in that group that you are connected to. And this is what I find what happens is you could be the kind of person that's doing that little work on the side, right? So you don't really separate necessarily, but you go do your work on the side. Every time you keep showing back up into that group, they can see the glow. They can see the expansion. They can see the work that's being done that you're not necessarily talking about. They can see the growth. They can see the change. They can see the beauty exuding off of you because of the inner work that you're doing when you're not necessarily sitting right next to them and being connected with them. And every time you go into that environment, it's going to cause some level of conflict. And either you are going to have to drop down who you are and become less of who you are, become less evolved than you know you are already, or either you're going to be asking for people to rise to your occasion, to rise to the mindset, to have an open mind. And many times it's not even available to them. And a lot of people have this situation in their family environments or places like that because there's like a rhythm, a pattern that flows in those connections, in those spaces, and in those communities. And when you get outside of it and you're not lockstep with it anymore, you're breaking the patterns. You're breaking different generational connections and curses. And a lot of people think, well, I can do that and still be connected. It's almost impossible. And that's why I always tell people, separate to elevate. If elevating in many areas of your life, expanding and growing and being more of the highest version of who you are in many areas of your life is a goal that you have, because everybody doesn't have it. But normally people who are watching this kind of content does have it. If that is something that is important to you, then you're going to always find yourself needing to be in solitude for a while. And the reason why I say solitude is your superpower, because in solitude, it's like going into the cave. It's like having those moments to where nobody or nothing is interfering or interacting with you in an opposing manner, right? And one of my favorite books, The Science of Getting Rich, Wallace D. Wattles, it was written like in the 1920s. He talks about that, how whenever you're working on these goals and you're trying to accomplish this thing, if you're going to decide that this is your belief system, you need to not be around any areas, any environments where they're not believing the same thing, not have conversations where people are talking the opposite of these values, not read books or entertainment or TV. He was really strict about it. He was like, bring no information into your life that's going to oppose it until you become solidified in this mindset. And so many of us, we get a little bit taste of the newer mindset that we want to have in a new way of being. And the first thing that we do is drag ourselves back into the old environments. And then we find ourselves back into a pattern or a mindset really quickly that we thought we'd outgrown. But we really didn't spend enough time in our solitude in order to solidify those aspects of who we are. And much of the time, when we are in solitude and we're growing and we're elevating and we're working on things and we're healing and we're tapping into all of the source energy that we need in order to be the best version of who we are, when it's okay for us to be in environments that are opposing the mindset that we have, we won't have to fight it anymore. It'll be very easy. I've done that in many places. There was a time when I separated myself from everything and everybody around me, right? And it was like, I'm just raising my daughters and this is just what it's going to be. I'm going to these little soccer games. I'm going to do this ballet. And I'm going to really figure out how to change these things that I do not like that I see. And it's okay that I didn't like them. It's okay that I wanted to expand and change them, even if nobody else was really into doing that was around me. Then there was a point where every time I came back into the older environment, I felt, energetically, heavy. I felt exhausted. I felt like I was always trying to hold my tongue, and I always wanted to challenge somebody, but I'm like, no, no, you don't do that anymore. And I would, keep it to myself, right? But the energy was still there. I still wanted to participate at that level. But when I truly was allowed myself to be in solitude long enough and was no longer apologetic for it, or no longer feeling guilty because this is what I needed and this is what was important, I went back into those environments and like nothing challenged me. It's like my mindset had gotten so solid and so secure and so solidified that when I went into those spaces, my energy took over what was happening in the environment. My energy was the overwhelming, atmosphere shifter, as opposed to the other way around. And that's what we'll find sometimes, that when we haven't done enough of separating from different environments and we try to go back in them, what we really haven't worked on, or what's really needing to be done, or the work that still needs to be done, is always going to keep on popping up at us. It's going to keep on showing up because the separation is not complete. It's kind of like when people talk about in the Bible sometimes. I don't know. I was raised Muslim, so you got to excuse me if I say this wrong, but Christianity is huge. You hear stuff about the Bible everywhere. They were talking about how when a husband and wife gets together, they cleave unto each other for like a year or whatever before they go out into the world. How many people are actually doing that? Most people have marriages like the way that I actually did. You start off with everybody in your business. You start off with everybody having an opinion. You start off with chaos and confusion from every direction around you. All of the patterns of dysfunction from this family and from that family, and the people having opinions, and go see a marriage counselor and all these little things. Come to my church and and all these little things, and in there. But really, you have not become friends, and you haven't gotten to know each other in a deep enough way, so that way it's you and that person sort of against the world, as opposed to you and that person against each other. And so many of us are in that space where we need to separate from the environments that we come from, separate from the conversations, separate from the mindsets, separate from the relationships, separate from just the way of being before we can go back into the world and be the version of ourselves that we want to be, right? And sometimes we can get in a space to where we are not separating to elevate. We are just sitting back and kind of having an attitude with the people around us, or the people that we are connected to, but we're not necessarily growing when we are disconnecting from those spaces. So that's why I feel like solitude is your biggest important superpower, because it's free. Solitude is free, right? Solitude is something that you can tap into at any given time. Say that you are working in a place where you work with a lot of people, a lot of co-workers, and they gossip about everyone. They have negative things to say about everybody you work with. There's always a problem with this supervisor. There's always somebody talking about they're not doing their jobs and all this, or either I'm not doing that. That's not my job. You hear all this bickering and stuff. And then come lunchtime, there you go, jumping in the car with those people to go to lunch, and y'all gonna talk about all the same stuff while you're at lunch, and you're gonna come back with the same energy and the same attitude. You have to be strong enough and bold enough to say, you know what, girl, no, I'm gonna go sit in my car today. Oh, I got an errand to run on lunch. If you're not strong enough to tell people the truth, like, I don't wanna go with y'all. I got an errand to run today on lunch. And then you separate yourself from that environment. And the further you get distance from any type of dysfunction or any type of generational patterns and stuff, the better you can see them. When you're sitting rock solid right up inside of them, you can't see them. And this has been so important for me, even with raising children, is because there were certain behaviors and mindsets that I didn't want to have come over, right? I don't feel like I was raised in an environment where women were complimentary towards each other, where women were like, you're beautiful, you're smart. It was more competitive in kind of comparison from what I've experienced. And people can deny it to the end of the days, but I know what I saw, and I know what I experienced, and I can't be gaslit there. And I know how I know how I was raised, and my mother, beautiful person, blah, 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 all that good stuff. But there are certain things that we come into this environment with, that we were raised with, and if we don't check it, it continues on. So one of the biggest things that I wanted with my own daughters is for them to want the best for each other, but like in a real way. And I wanted it to be easy. I wanted them to truly be friends, and I wanted them to love on each other the way that I don't feel like I got to experience. It always felt like a little bit performative when I was a kid, or either kind of just like, well, these are the people I come from, let me just hang around. Like, it never was an emotional, deep connection. And I wanted that for them. So for me, separating was a lot about getting my daughters to cleave and us as a family, and that real emotional bond to be there. And now it just is, there's no ego sitting there sometimes, like, with something, we get in little debates and tiffs. That is very family like and all, but there's no walls up of, what was done in the past and who didn't deal with it and who needs to heal. Like, they don't have that kind of stuff going on, because there's a very healthy approach to how they are connected. And I'll be honest with you, there's never a time, when I tell you, if I'm with one of them and one of them is not there or whatever, where they sit there and talk ugly or negative about the other sister in any kind of way. And I don't do it either. So they already know it's not even something, right, that is like that. They don't do it with their friends either. And my daughter came home and told me one day, she was just like, you know what, those two girls over there are friends, because she was like on the, the spinning flag thing when she was in high school. And she was like, those two girls over there are sisters. She was like, I never even noticed that. She was like, because that one talks about that one so bad. I thought that was just like some old homegirl she had that she didn't like. And I was like, dang, imagine that dynamic that was created for her to come to school and talk about her sister so poorly, and that is her sister. And that's one thing I can say about growing up and all. Even if you talked about each other all around in the whole family with each other poorly, you rarely took that outside to other people, right? And so my separation from a lot of what was happening was that it was also the way people saw relationships in men, having this centered man mindset of just always having to have somebody, always, every event, there's always a new guy or somebody having to be there. And I wanted to walk in places and be proud and strong and be like, you know what, ain't nobody in my life, and that's all good. If somebody's there, that's perfectly fine, but it doesn't define me in any kind of way. And I came from a matriarch who saw that as the highest way of evolving and being in this life. It's just like, oh, but they've been married for 45 years. She never talked about what kind of marriage it was, but that was just her mindset. And like I say, this is not a beating up on anything, but when we truly want to disrupt those patterns and be this newer version of ourselves and experience the world the way that we know there's a better way of being, we have to separate from those environments. And that's not saying permanently. That's not saying in an ugly fashion. That's not saying negatively. But what you'll find is that when you do decide to separate, not everybody's going to agree with that, right? I remember I told an older sibling one time, I was like, I need to take 2 weeks away from family. This was before I was even to any real personal development, but this was my intuition. And I remember saying that it was even before I had kids. And it was very early in my time when I was living in Dallas. Before, it was early. And I was like, I need at least 2 weeks. And she called me, you can't not talk to your family for 2 weeks. You can't do that. She was like, people are worried about you. Who do you think you are? And I'm like, you know what? They would, what I do now is months at a time. It's whatever I need. But I remember that conversation so well. And she called me on the phone. She was like, you can't do that. And I was like in the mindset of, well, maybe I can't. And now I realize I can do whatever I want. You can do whatever you want whenever you need. And so it's a better world when you understand that, because then you don't have anxiety, you don't have depression, you don't have anger, you don't have resentment, because you're coming out when you're ready and you're pulling in when you're not. And if people don't like it, they can write you off, and you just got to accept that just may be the outcome, and it's all good, right? Separate to elevate. Your solitude is your superpower. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.